I drove for 2 hours, the miles feeling like an act of penance before I even arrived. The expensive bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon I was carrying felt heavy, a useless offering. I knew the moment. I stepped through the grand oak doors of the Henderson estate. The adult identity I'd spent 6 years carving out in my apartment complex 40 miles away would crumble. I would cease to be Nina, a 26-year-old professional with a secure job, and become only the youngest daughter, a role synonymous with servitude. On Christmas Eve, my sister spilled her pie and demanded I clean it. My brother filmed me scrubbing. Dad called me a servant. 1 month later, I filed a lion on their $450,000 house. That was the sequence of events that finally led me to redefine my family. My mother, Alara, met me in the marble foyer. She didn't offer a hug or a holiday greeting. Her eyes, cool and gray like the December sky, swept over my coat and then settled on the gift bag. She plucked it from my hand before I could set down my purse. "The prime rib isn't roasted yet," she said, not as a request, but as a final verdict. "Go to the kitchen." My back hurts too much. Her silk blouse soughed as she turned, disappearing into the candlelit living room, where the murmur of civilized conversation had already begun. My stomach twisted into a tight knot. I hadn't even taken off my winter coat. I stood for a moment, absorbing the cold reality of the kitchen. The enormous slab of prime rib, still partially wrapped in butcher paper, dominated the counter. I moved on autopilot, reaching for the familiar apron that had hung on its hook since I was 16. I tied it around my waist, the coarse cloth a symbol of the role I was here to play. The preparation was meticulous. Season the meat. Preheat the oven to 450 degrees. Sear the outside to lock in the flavor. Then lower the temperature for the slow, perfect roast. Through the cracked kitchen door, I could glimpse the dining room. Thaddeus, Alara, Serafina, and Caspian were already seated. The chandelier cast a warm, golden glow over the mahogany table, making them look like a picture from an expensive holiday magazine. I heard the clink of silverware, the light, satisfied laughter. They had started the feast. They had started the feast without me, without even a pause to see if I was present. I checked the temperature gauge on the prime rib and turned my attention to the pecan pie, pressing the crimped crust edges, a final detail that took 20 minutes to perfect. The crust turned golden brown, exactly as it should. Finally, the timer went off. I pulled the pie from the oven, wiped my hands on my apron, and walked into the dining room. My family paused their conversation, but only briefly. My sister, Serafina, was cutting into a thick, pink center slice, the juices running onto the white porcelain. Caspian had piled 3 slices of the succulent meat onto his plate. My own seat at the table held a harsh, familiar truth. On my plate lay not the fragrant, delicious center cuts I had spent the afternoon preparing. Instead, there were only the small, charred edges, the tough, burnt scraps that would normally be discarded. They rested next to a meager spoonful of mashed potatoes, the leftovers of the leftovers. The meat was tough and bitter on my tongue. My throat tightened, and I fought to swallow back the lump that felt like both the meat and my accumulated resentment. Nobody asked me about my drive. Nobody asked about my job. Nobody wished me a Merry Christmas. My mother glanced at me, her face impassive. "Eat fast so you can clean up," she commanded, her voice devoid of warmth. "I want to watch a movie at 8 o'clock. I ate the meager portion in 5 short minutes, forcing down the mashed potatoes that tasted like paste. The sight of my family enjoying the best cuts, oblivious to my presence beyond my utility, was a crushing humiliation. When they migrated to the living room for the movie, leaving the wreckage of the meal behind, I felt the immediate, stifling silence descend upon me. The kitchen was a battlefield of soiled plates, gravy smears, and crumpled napkins. My Christmas Eve was only just beginning. My role was to erase the evidence of their feast. That task, I thought as I stacked the dishes, I was always reserved for me. I cleared the smear of gravy and the lipstick, stained wine glasses, stacking the plates that held the evidence of their feast. My stomach still felt tight, hollowed out by the few burnt scraps I'd managed to swallow. I wanted nothing more than to take off the apron and leave the mess. But the 8 o'clock movie start time was fast approaching, and Alara's demand for clean-up rang in my ears. Before the dishwashing marathon, I had one final obligation. Dessert. I carefully arranged 5 of my mother's special Christmas dessert plates, white glazed porcelain with cheerful red and green polka dots she'd bought last year, onto a large silver serving tray. Dividing the pecan pie was an exercise in absolute fairness. I measured each slice with my eye, ensuring no one could complain about receiving a millimeter less than anyone else. I then scooped vanilla ice cream onto each warm slice, watching the cold cream begin its inevitable melt into the rich brown filling. The tray was heavy, and my arms trembled slightly as I carried it out of the kitchen. The living room was dark, illuminated only by the flickering glow of the television screen, which was playing a loud, canned laughter romantic comedy. My family was arranged on the sectional like royalty. Thaddeus in his leather recliner, Alara stretched out on the chaise lounge, and Serafina and Caspian sprawled across the middle. I moved quietly, distributing the dessert. My father took his plate without looking up from the screen. My mother did the same, her attention fixed on the movie. Caspian grabbed his with one hand, his face illuminated by the light of his phone screen, which he was scrolling through incessantly. When I brought the tray to Serafina, she was also glued to her phone, her thumb moving rapidly on Instagram. I held the plate carefully in front of her. "Sarah, here's your." She waved her hand dismissively, an impatient flick of the wrist intended to take the plate without requiring her to look away or pause her scrolling. Crash. It happened fast. Her careless hand clipped the edge of the tray. The heavy white plate, the one with the cheerful red and green polka dots, flew off, landing upside down on the Persian rug my mother had paid $3,000 for last spring. Pecan pie, ice cream, and ceramic shrapnel splattered across the expensive wool. "Oh my goodness, Nina!" Serafina shrieked, instantly jerking her feet up onto the sofa. But the shriek was not apologetic. It was pure selfish indignation. She did not look at the mess she had created. Her eyes finally left her phone screen, not to look at me, but to lift her chin and signal toward the floor. Her gesture clearly communicated the demand, "Clean it up." With the other hand, she casually reached for the last remaining slice of pie on the tray I was still holding. So, I realized, not only would I not be eating the dessert I had perfected, but I was now responsible for cleaning up the destruction of her portion. "I'll get something to clean this up," I whispered, though my throat felt tight and dry. No one responded. No one offered a napkin or a word of apology. Thaddeus was chewing slowly, his gaze returned to the television. Caspian chuckled at something on his phone. I walked back to the kitchen, my hands shaking so violently I had trouble wetting the cloth under the faucet. I grabbed the dustpan and returned, dropping to my knees on the soft, expensive rug. I was still wearing the apron. My knees pressed into the pile of the rug as I began diligently wiping the sticky cream and pie filling off the floor, picking up the jagged pieces of the shattered porcelain plate. As I knelt there, working silently, my phone buzzed in the pocket of my jeans. A Facebook notification. My stomach plummeted. I pulled the phone out with my sticky fingers and clicked the notification. Caspian had just posted a 10-second video. It was filmed from a high angle. In the shaky clip, I was visible, kneeling on the floor, still wearing the apron. I diligently scrubbing the spilled dessert at Serafina's elevated feet. Serafina was posing mockingly, pointing down at me with her fork as she ate the replacement, slice of pie. The angle made it look like I was bowing, a maid in a period drama, subservient and broken. The caption was cruel and concise. The maid is acting deep again. Cinderella wannabe. Help is hard to find. The video had 12 likes already. I slowly raised my head. Caspian was giggling, showing the screen to Serafina. She burst out laughing, a high, careless sound that made her nearly choke on the dessert I had brought her. My mother glanced over, her face set in a cold, impassive mask. She said nothing, pretending to be deaf and blind to the cruelty unfolding inches away from her. Then, my father, Thaddeus, spoke. His voice, condescending and casual, cut through the residual shame clinging to me. "Oh, come on. She likes doing it," he called out. He took a slow sip of his beer. "Nina was born to serve. Right? Daughter." The whole room, my siblings, the canned laughter from the television, even the actress on the screen, seemed to burst into one unified wave of laughter, aimed directly at me. I was kneeling on the floor, apron tied tight, dirtied and documented. That was the moment. That casual, final dismissal of my personhood, delivered by the man who was supposed to protect me, while my brother recorded the evidence. Something inside me snapped, not with a loud crack, but with a quiet, final release. I did not scream. I did not cry. I didn't throw the wet rag at Caspian's smug, giggling face. Instead, I stood up slowly. I walked 2 deliberate steps. Then, I placed the dirty, cream-smeared rag decisively onto Caspian's expensive, white porcelain dessert plate. The one he had set down on the rug to film me. The rag landed with a wet plop. The rag landed with a wet plop. The rag landed with a wet plop. Pie filling and melted ice cream smearing across the pristine surface. I walked straight for the stairs. "You have to finish cleaning. You can't leave the plate on the floor like that." Serafina shrieked from behind me, her voice shrill with sudden, genuine indignation. I didn't turn around. I kept walking, my footsteps heavy on the expensive carpeted stairs. I vaguely heard Caspian trying to console her. "It's okay. She'll clean it up right away." But I wasn't going to clean it up. Not tonight. Not ever again. I walked past the landing, heading directly to the guest room, where I'd left my overnight bag. The bag I'd packed with the naive thought of staying through Christmas Day. I grabbed my purse and went straight out the back exit, through the cold mudroom. My winter coat was still downstairs in the foyer, but I didn't care. The December air bit through my thin sweater. I started my beat-up sedan and drove straight out of the Henderson estate driveway. My hands shaking on the wheel, not from the cold, but from the crystalline clarity of my rage. I was driving toward Aunt Rowena's house, an hour away, finally, irrevocably, free. The highway was dark and empty, a ribbon of asphalt stretching away from the glowing mockery of the Henderson estate. I pressed down on the gas pedal of my beat-up sedan, the old engine vibrating beneath me. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. Shaking not from the December cold, but from the humiliation and the sudden, burning clarity of my rage. I was driving toward Aunt Rowena's house, an hour away, having finally, irrevocably, chosen myself over my family's expectations. Christmas lights twinkled in the windows of the houses I passed, symbols of the quiet, normal family life I had never known. The cold air, biting through my thin sweater, was a sharp, necessary reminder of the choice I had made. I had left the rag on the porcelain plate. I had walked away. By the time I pulled into Aunt Rowena and Uncle Silas's driveway, it was nearly 10 o'clock. The porch light was on, a beacon of warmth. Uncle Silas opened the door before I could even knock. He must have seen the headlights of my old car. He took one look at my coatless, shaking frame and the small overnight bag I clutched. He didn't ask a single long-winded question. He simply said the warmest sentence I had ever heard. "Come in. We have eggnog." I burst into tears right there on the doorstep. The accumulated humiliation, The years of silent endurance, the crushing weight of the last 4 hours. It all came pouring out. Aunt Rowena appeared behind him. Her face creased with immediate concern. She pulled me into a hug that smelled deeply of cinnamon and pine, the scent of a Christmas I had always longed for. I sobbed into her shoulder while Uncle Silas quietly ushered me inside and took my bag. They didn't press me for details. They led me to the couch, wrapped me in a soft fleece blanket, and put a steaming mug of spiked eggnog in my hands. The lights of their Christmas tree blurred into soft, comforting reds and greens through my tears. "When you're ready," Aunt Rowena said softly, squeezing my hand. I told them everything. I recounted the burnt meat, the laughter at the table, the broken plate, and the awful, final malice of the video, and my father's words. Nina was born to serve. I confessed the absolute depth of my humiliation. Uncle Silas's jaw tightened. Aunt Rowena's eyes filled with tears. I knew Alara was cold. She whispered, referring to my mother. But I didn't realize it had gotten this bad. She's always been this way. I managed, my voice breaking. I just kept thinking that if I tried harder, if I was more helpful, maybe she'd love me. "Oh, sweetheart." Aunt Rowena pulled me close again. "This isn't about you. This has never been about you." Later that night, long after my aunt and uncle had gone to bed, I lay awake in the peaceful guest room. I stared at the ceiling, replaying every humiliation, every time I'd swallowed my pride and my hurt. At 2 a.m, I opened my laptop. It was time to face reality, not just emotionally, but financially. My mother had insisted on a joint checking account when I was 16, ostensibly for emergencies. In reality, it was a funnel for my paychecks, money I dutifully transferred for their bills and groceries. My family believed that account, where I usually kept about $2,000, was all I had, cementing their control. But 3 years ago, I had secretly opened a high-yield savings account at a completely different bank. Every bonus, every overtime payment, every tax refund, it all went there. My family knew nothing about it. The screen displayed the number, $28,400. It was my secret future. I switched tabs to the joint account. Current balance 0. In the car, sitting in Aunt Rowena's driveway earlier, I had already executed the transaction. Transfer all funds. Confirm. I had successfully drained every cent of my contribution, $2,000, back into my control. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, I decided to check my phone. Perhaps they were asleep, or perhaps they still thought I was the weak little girl who would meekly go downstairs to clean up after everyone was asleep. The screen lit up with texts from Mom. "What are you doing? Why aren't the dishes washed?" was the first, sent hours ago. A second followed, "Nina, this is unacceptable. Come downstairs right now." The realization hit me they truly thought I was still there, too afraid of conflict to do anything but comply. The image of Cinderella, sweeping floors while waiting for rescue, snapped into sharp focus. That girl was dead. Now, there was only Nina. The woman with $28,000 and the guts to say no. I turned off my phone, extinguishing the last line of communication, and finally went to sleep. The peace lasted exactly 3 days. 3 days where I was treated like a guest, not a maid. On the third afternoon, driving back to my rented 1-bedroom apartment 40 minutes from my office, my phone buzzed. Serafina, without a single word asking where I was, or a word of apology, sent a text reeking of greed. "Why was the card declined at the SPY? Didn't you deposit your paycheck? I need to pay $800 right now." My blood ran cold. The card, the joint account debit card I had drained 3 days ago. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I felt the old pull to explain, to apologize. But I didn't. I texted back, every word ice cold, every sentence a boundary. "That is a joint checking account, and I have withdrawn all my portion of the money. Good luck with the spa bill. I hit send. 5 seconds later, the phone started ringing. Serafina. I declined the call. It rang again. Declined. Then the text started pouring in. From Serafina. Are you kidding me right now? That's theft. From Caspian. What is wrong with you? Mom needs that money for groceries. From Mom. Nina from Mom. Nina from Mom. Nina. Call me immediately. This is unacceptable and irresponsible. From Dad. You're stealing from your own family. I raised you better than this. The barrage of abusive texts came rapid fire, accusing me of being selfish and ungrateful. I sat on my couch and read them all, letting the venomous words wash over me until they lost their power. Then, quietly, decisively, I blocked them. Serafina. Blocked. Caspian. Blocked. Blocked. I hesitated over Mom's number. Then I pressed block. The silence was deafening, but it was not peaceful. It was merely a pause before the next attack. That evening, around 9 o'clock, I was heating up soup in my kitchen when the pounding started on my door. Hard, relentless. Nina. Open this door right now. My mother's voice screamed, followed by Serafina's high, pitched fury. They had driven here. To my rented apartment. Winnow, you're in there? Your car is in the parking lot. You can't just steal from us and hide. A bang. Bang. My heart hammered. The soup bubbled on the stove, forgotten. They were going to break down the door. I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking violently, and dialed 911. I was no longer protecting my family, I was protecting myself. 911, what's your emergency? A calm voice asked. My mother and sister are at my apartment. Banging on my door and screaming. I whispered into the phone, my voice trembling. I've asked them to leave, but they won't. I'm scared. The pounding was relentless. Shaking the wood in the frame. The dispatcher's professional questions grounded me, drawing me back from the brink of panic. 5 minutes later, 5 minutes of agonizing, continuous noise, I heard sirens. The banging stopped abruptly. I crept to my window and peeked through the blinds. 2 police cars. 4 officers. My mother and Serafina stood on the walkway, gesticulating wildly, attempting to explain something to the officers. One young officer looked up, and I quickly retreated. A professional knock followed, controlled and firm. Ma'am. Police. Can you come to the door? I opened the door a crack, the security chain taut. The officer confirmed I was Nina Henderson, ensured I was all right, and then relayed the necessary information. They're leaving now. We've explained this constitutes harassment. If they come back, call us immediately. After the officers departed, a softer knock came. Through the peephole, I saw a woman my age holding a plate. It was Jane, who lived in apartment 3B. She had brought cookies and hot cocoa, and sat with me in my tiny living room, listening without judgment as I gave her the abbreviated version: family drama, money issues, boundaries. Good for you, for calling the cops. That took guts, she said firmly before she left. I had established the boundary. I had called for protection. I sat alone, drinking the cocoa, and for the first time since Christmas Eve, I felt a flicker of something new, sharp, and necessary cold defiance. But my family, unable to force entry or restore their financial control, decided to switch tactics and attack my livelihood. It started 2 days later. I was at my desk at work, again trying to focus on a presentation about quarterly earnings, when my work phone buzzed. Someone had tagged the company in a Facebook post. I opened it with a rising sense of dread. Caspian had written a long, venomous post. He fabricated a story that his sister, me, had scammed the family and stolen retirement funds, asserting that our company employed people with no moral character. Serafina had shared it, adding her own hateful commentary. They had mobilized their friends and network to flood my company's official Facebook page, leaving a series of fake reviews. Employee Nina is a scammer of her own family. Terrible character. Would never trust this company. My hands shook as I scrolled through at least 20 comments. All from people I'd never met, all saying horrible things about me, all echoing Caspian's lies. The shame was suffocating. They weren't just trying to hurt me. They were trying to destroy my professional life, the one safe area I had successfully built away from them. Then my desk phone rang. "Nina, can you come to conference room B, please?" It was Linda from Human Resources. My stomach dropped like a stone. I knew instantly what this was about. The climax of this external attack came the next morning. Thaddeus, my father, had called the company headquarters directly, repeating the fabrication about stolen retirement money and demanding to speak to my manager. I walked into conference room B on my first full day back after the holidays. Linda from HR and my manager, Stephen, sat across the polished table from me. The room, usually a site of strategy and planning, felt suddenly small and suffocating. "Nina," Linda began, her voice carefully neutral, "we've received some concerning communications regarding you." I felt the blood drain from my face. Stephen leaned forward, looking genuinely uncomfortable. "Someone claiming to be your father called corporate yesterday. He made some very serious allegations about theft and fraud. And our social media has been flooded with negative comments about your character." "It's not true," I managed, my voice barely audible. "None of it is true." "We're not accusing you of anything," Linda quickly assured me, "but the damage was done. But we need to address this. The company's reputation is paramount. My professional competence, my years of hard work, my meticulously built reputation, it was all hollowed out by their lies." "I understand," I replied, the word hollow. A crushing feeling of utter humiliation engulfed me. These were my coworkers, the people I respected. My family had invaded my sanctuary and tried to poison it. "We're giving you a formal warning," Stephen said, his gaze sympathetic but firm. "Keep your personal life separate from work. If this continues, we'll have to take further action." I nodded, unable to speak, and walked back to my desk in a haze. Coworkers glanced at me, then quickly looked away. Had they seen the posts? I sat down and stared at my screen, feeling tears well up. I thought I had gained freedom, but they had simply changed the battleground. Just when I felt absolute despair, my cell phone buzzed. A text from Uncle Silas. "Rowena and I want to help. Can you meet us for dinner tonight? There's someone I want you to meet." My last remaining allies were mobilizing. I knew what this meant. The fight was about to move from defense to offense, and I was no longer going to be fighting alone. That evening, the frantic fear that had consumed me since the HR warning was replaced by a rigid, cold determination. I drove with Uncle Silas to the city center, away from the suburban sprawl and toward the tall, shining towers of downtown finance and law. He had made an appointment for me with attorney Lysandra Vale, his high school best friend. "She's the best," Uncle Silas said as we drove. "Specializes in family financial fraud and messy divorces. She knows how to handle people like your parents." The office was in a prestigious building, all glass and steel, exuding an air of calculated justice. We took the elevator to the 7th floor. The reception area was quiet, furnished with leather chairs and abstract art that looked expensive and deliberate. Attorney Lysandra Vale was exactly what I needed to see. She was in her early 50s, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a neat bun, and eyes that missed absolutely nothing. She wore a crisp navy suit and shook my hand with a firm, decisive grip. "Silas has told me a bit about your situation," she said, gesturing for us to sit around a large, dark conference table. "But I'd like to hear it from you, Nina. Start from the beginning, including the money." So, I told her everything. The forced servitude since I was a teenager, the joint checking account, the 2-hour drive to the house, the burnt meat, the shattered porcelain plate, the video, my father's cruel declaration that I was born to serve. I recounted the harassment at my door and the final, successful attack on my job, describing the humiliation of the HR warning. Lysandra listened without interrupting, making occasional, swift notes on a legal pad. When I finished, she sat back in her chair and studied me for a long moment. "Do you have documentation?" she asked. "Off what?" "The joint account statements, showing your deposits versus their withdrawals, screenshots of the texts before you blocked them, the video link, the HR record of your father's call." I nodded. "I have bank statements. I saved the screenshots, and the video is still up on Caspian's profile, although it's set to private now. And yes, HR has a record of my father's serious allegations." A slow, chilling smile spread across Lysandra's face. "Good. That is very good." She tapped her pen against the pad. "This is textbook financial exploitation. You were a minor when they opened that joint account. You've been making regular deposits for years. They've been withdrawing funds for personal expenses, split treatments, electronics, leisure, without your consent. And the harassment campaign, especially the call to your employer, constitutes intentional infliction of emotional distress." Hope flickered in my chest, hot and startling. "So you think we have a case?" "I think we have an excellent case," she stated. Then she paused. "But I want to be upfront with you about costs." My hope immediately dimmed. I knew the reality of big law firms. I charge $350 an hour for this type of work. Lysandra continued. "A case like this, with discovery, depositions, possibly going to trial. We were looking at $25,000 to $30,000 in legal fees." The number hit me like a physical blow. $25,000. I only had $28,400 in my secret savings account. I only have over $28,000 in savings, I admitted, my voice trembling with worry. "If the lawsuit drags on, I won't have enough money to pay your hourly fees. I'll be bankrupt before reclaiming justice." The thought of giving up, of seeing all those years of saving reduced to nothing, flashed through my mind. Uncle Silas placed his hand on my shoulder, firm and reassuring. "Uncle Silas, Rowena and I have agreed to support you with $10,000, Nina. Don't worry about money right now. We have it set aside. This is what family does. Real family." Real family. Tears pricked my eyes again. But these were tears of gratitude, not grief. Lysandra looked at me, her smile gentle, but her eyes flashing with sharp intelligence. "Here is what we will do. Given the clarity of your documentation and Silas's faith in you, I will charge a flat fee of $25,000 for everything, until the lawsuit concludes. No hourly billing. No surprises. $25,000 total. A flat fee." My breath hitched. "And I believe we will get back much more than that," she said. "Your family has documented their own wrongdoing. That video alone is worth its weight in gold. It shows their attitude toward you, their lack of respect. The exploitative dynamic, combined with the financial records and the harassment campaign, we can pursue not just return of funds, but significant damages for emotional distress." "How much are we talking about?" I asked quietly, conservatively. "I'd estimate we could get a judgment of $100,000 to $150,000. Possibly more if we go to trial and a jury sees that video." My breath caught. That was more than 5 times my total savings. That was life-changing money. My hesitation vanished instantly. My family thought I was cowering in fear because of the HR warning. Good. Let them think that. Let them continue to be arrogant, thinking I was the maid with no money and no guts to resist. That overconfidence was the trap. If they thought I'd given up, they would get sloppy. They would keep posting. They would keep harassing. They would keep creating evidence. "Okay," I said, my voice steady and certain for the first time in days. "Let's do it." Lysandra smiled a predator's smile. Excellent. I'll need you to sign a retainer agreement. And I'll need you to do one thing for me, Nina. What did you do to your phone? I blocked all their numbers. Don't block them anymore. Unblock them right now. Let them keep texting you. Let them keep leaving evidence. Do not respond. That's important. But don't block them. Every threatening text. Every harassing call. Every nasty social media post is another nail in their coffin. I thought about the vile names, the abuse I would have to see. But Lysandra was right. I could do that. I could absorb the small pain for the promise of ultimate justice. Lysandra pulled a contract from her desk. I read through the retainer agreement carefully. Flat fee, $25,000. Scope of representation: financial exploitation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and related claims. Terms: through final judgment or settlement. I signed my name at the bottom. The trap had been baited. They didn't know that the maid had just signed a contract with their nightmare. I had signed the retainer, and the decision felt like a steel cage dropping around the Henderson family's chaos, protecting me from their noise. They didn't know the maid had hired a lawyer. They only knew I had unblocked their numbers as Lysandra instructed, and I was maintaining absolute, unnerving silence. Their abuse continued to flow: endless texts, voicemails, and social media commentary, all meticulously screenshot and filed in a secure folder I labeled Evidency. 3 days after meeting with Lysandra, the litigation process began in earnest. Lysandra was building a financial fortress around my future. She laid out the initial legal documents on her conference table. The air in the room smelled the air in the room, smelled the air in the room, smelled of expensive leather and calculated justice. We're filing 2 main causes of action, Lysandra explained, sliding a stapled document toward me. Defamation of character. Because they publicly branded you a thief and a parasite. And tortious interference with employment. Because Caspian's little Instagram crusade was designed to destroy your professional reputation. The legal language was stark and absolute. It put my emotional reality into a professional framework. The documents defined the abuse, forcing it out of the vague, painful realm of family drama and into the concrete world of claims. What happens next? I asked. Lysandra's smile was sharp as a scalpel. Discovery. The beautiful, terrible phase where everyone has to show their cards. We request financial records, communications, and evidence. Your family is going to learn that transparency is not their friend. The discovery phase felt like watching a slow motion car crash from a great distance. Lysandra's paralegal filed subpoenas for the bank records related to the old joint checking account. This was the account I had contributed $2,000 to every month, like clockwork. The account my family had treated like a community piggy bank for their own whims. When the statements finally arrived, Lysandra spread them across her conference table like crime scene photos. The paper was official, bearing the bank's letterhead, transaction codes, and dates. Look at this, she said, running her finger down the deposit column. Month after month. Nina Henderson. $2,000. Nina Henderson. $2,000. She then flipped to the withdrawal side. And here? Serafina Henderson. $1,000. $200. Salon and boutique charges. Alara Henderson. $800. Country club membership. Caspian Henderson. $600. Electronic store. The Cold. Precise numbers told the story I had lived but had never voiced aloud. I was the engine. They were the passengers. They called you the parasite, Lysandra said quietly. But the math says otherwise. My throat tightened, seeing it in black and white. Undeniable. I hadn't been imagining things. I hadn't been dramatic or ungrateful. I had been systematically used. The receipts for Serafina's spy treatments and my mother's country club dues were paid for with the same money they accused me of stealing. This official proof was more validating than any apology could have been. But the real explosion came from the asset investigation. Lysandra had hired a forensic accountant, a woman named Margaret who looked like a kindly grandmother, but possessed the instincts of a bloodhound. Margaret had dug deep, investigating property records, loan documents, and credit reports on my parents. What Margaret found made my father's Christmas Eve rant look like a minor inconvenience. Your father took out a second mortgage on the Henderson estate. Margaret explained during our next meeting, her reading glasses perched on her nose. 14 months ago. Amount $175,000. I blinked. A second mortgage. My parents had always presented themselves as financially solid, the house being the central, immutable symbol of their success and stability. Why? I asked. According to the loan application, it was for business investment purposes, Margaret said, her tone dry as desert sand. But when we referenced with business registrations, tax filings, and corporate databases, we found nothing. No LLC, no partnership, no legitimate business entity. Lysandra leaned back in her chair, folding her hands. Translation. Your father gambled on some scheme, probably sold to him by a smooth-talking con artist, and lost everything. It's gone. Does my mother know about this second mortgage? Margaret shook her head. The mortgage documents only required one signature, because your father's name was primary on the title. He didn't need her permission. The house they'd been so proud of, the one they'd lorded over me like proof of their superiority, the place that felt like a cold, golden throne, was drowning in debt. The marble countertops, the glowing chandelier, the manicured lawn, all of it was leveraged to the hilt. They're underwater. Lysandra concluded. And they don't even know we know yet. This news shifted the entire strategic landscape. My parents weren't untouchable wealthy people with a temporary cash flow problem. They were bankrupt narcissists, living on borrowed time. The foundation of the family's control, their wealth, was a complete and total lie. Their arrogance, their belief in their own superiority, was built on an impending collapse. I felt a sense of quiet vindication. Their abuse wasn't a sign of their power. It was a desperate lash from a failing institution. Their attempt to destroy my job was likely fueled by their own underlying financial panic, hoping to force me back into the role of obedient contributor to their sinking ship. We proceed immediately with the lawsuit, Lysandra said, tapping the documents. This changes our collection strategy entirely. We don't have to rely just on damages, we can go after the property itself. We file a notice of lis pendens against the estate immediately, ensuring that if they try to sell the house to pay off debts, they have to pay you first. My fear was completely replaced by a cold, precise focus. I was no longer the humiliated girl on her knees. I was a plaintiff, armed with financial truths that could dismantle the edifice of the Henderson family's life. They were blinded by their own entitlement. I was working with an attorney who saw the entire board. I looked at the documents on the table, the evidence of my years of exploitation, and the proof of my father's secret failure. Let them talk. Let them send more hateful texts. Every word, every desperate action, every failed financial gamble was just another piece of kindling for the fire of my inevitable freedom. The real action was coming, and unlike them, I was prepared to watch the numbers deliver the final judgment. 4 months after Christmas Eve, I walked into the county courthouse. The building was all cream-colored stone and echoing hallways, a place where the weight of judgment was literal. I wore a crisp navy blazer and my most professional heels. I've a small armor of competence against the inevitable confrontation. The discovery process had been ruthless. It had bled my parents dry, forcing them to spend money. They didn't have to respond to subpoenas, attempting to justify their frivolous withdrawals. and scrambling to explain away Caspian's public social media posts. They had consulted several expensive lawyers, but the retainer fees started at $15,000, and their accounts were already scraped thin. They were representing themselves. I spotted them across the courtroom gallery. Thaddeus was in a wrinkled suit that had fit him better 20 pounds ago, looking pale and ill at ease. Alara clutched a cheap, knockoff leather portfolio. Serafina chewed gum aggressively, her arms crossed, while Caspian was scrolling on his phone until the bailiff told him sharply to put it away. They looked diminished, stripped of the imposing aura the Henderson estate had always granted them. Lysandra sat beside me at the plaintiff's table. Her posture was relaxed, yet her eyes were acutely alert, missing nothing. She had prepared me for this moment, coaching me through my testimony and reviewing every exhibit. But nothing truly prepares you for facing your family in a courtroom, not as a daughter, but as a legal adversary. All rise. The Honorable Judge Patricia Moreno presiding. Judge Moreno was a woman in her late 50s with steel-gray hair, her expression suggesting she had heard every lie and believed none of them. She settled into her chair and surveyed the room, her presence authoritative. Case number 2, 4CV8831. Henderson versus Henderson, Henderson, and Henderson. Counsel, are we ready to proceed? Lysandra stood, ready for the plaintiff. Your Honor. My father lurched to his feet, clearly unnerved. Ready for the defense, Your Honor. The trial began. Lysandra was surgical, starting with the bank statements. She walked the judge through the undisputed facts. My consistent $2,000 monthly contributions versus their intermittent, unexplained withdrawals for luxury goods. She established the joint account was overwhelmingly funded by my labor and used for their enjoyment. Next came the social media attacks. Lysandra presented the screenshots of Caspian's Instagram stories, calling me a greedy traitor and a family deserter, complete with laughing emojis and direct tags to my employer's official social media account. Tortious interference requires proof that the defendant intentionally disrupted the plaintiff's employment relationship. Lysandra explained, her voice clear and measured. Mr. Caspian Henderson tagged Nina's employer. He used her full name. He made allegations designed to damage her professional standing. That is textbook interference, Your Honor, resulting in a formal warning from Ms. Henderson's Human Resources Department. Then came the defamation evidence. Texts from Serafina calling me a lying thief in a group chat with extended family, a desperate voicemail from Alara telling me I was ungrateful and disturbed, and an email from Thaddeus himself to Uncle Silas, claiming I had stolen family funds and abandoned my responsibilities. Every vicious word was preserved, every insult documented. When it was my father's turn to respond to the allegations, he immediately began to unravel. Your Honor, this is ridiculous, Thaddeus said, his voice rising, betraying his nervousness. My daughter is making a mountain out of a molehill. We're a family. Families have disagreements. That doesn't mean we're guilty of these accusations. Mr. Henderson. Judge Moreno interrupted, sharp and decisive. Please address the specific allegations. Did you, or did you not send this email? She gestured to the exhibit on the screens. His message to Uncle Silas, dated the day after Christmas. Thaddeus's face flushed a mottled red. I was upset. She left us on Christmas Eve. She embarrassed us in front of. Did you send the email, sir? Yes. But. And did you know the allegations in that email, namely that your daughter stole money, were false at the time you sent it? His jaw worked. I believed she'd taken money from the joint account without permission. An account she contributed $2,000 to monthly, while your family withdrew funds freely. Lysandra interjected smoothly. An account she had every legal right to access. Thaddeus's composure cracked completely. She was living under our roof, eating our food, using our utilities. That money was her contribution to the household. Was there a written agreement stipulating that? Judge Moreno asked. Silence. Was your daughter ever prevented from accessing those funds before December 24th? More silence. Mr. Henderson. I suggest you stick to facts rather than feelings. But Thaddeus couldn't. The blinding narcissism that had ruled our household for decades. The absolute certainty that he was right, that he was owed service, that his children existed solely to cater to his comfort, came roaring to the surface. This is absurd, he shouted, his voice echoing off the courtroom walls. She's my daughter. I raised her. I fed her. And this is how she repays me. By dragging us to court like common criminals. She's vindictive. She's always been difficult. Ever since she was a child, she's had this attitude. This entitlement. Mr. Henderson, you need to. I don't need to do anything. He bellowed. I'm the victim here. She abandoned her family. She's the selfish one. The bailiff took a step forward. Judge Moreno's gavel came down hard, the sound sharp and final. Mr. Henderson, you will control yourself. Or you will be held in contempt. Do you understand? Thaddeus stood there, breathing hard, his face a terrifying red. Alara grabbed his arm, whispering frantically. But he shook her off. And that was the moment Lysandra chose to play the ace. Your Honor, if I may, she said calmly, cutting through the residual tension. I'd like to introduce Exhibit F into evidence. She nodded to her paralegal, who queued up a video on the courtroom screen. It was 10 seconds long, shaky, vertical format. The perspective was from above, looking down at a cream-colored tile floor. And there I was, on my hands and knees, apron tied tight, scrubbing. Caspian's voice came through the speakers, amused and casual. Look at Cinderella. Guess she forgot the ball was cancelled. Laughter followed from off-screen. Then the video ended. The courtroom was utterly silent. This video was posted to Mr. Caspian Henderson's Instagram story on Christmas Eve. Lysandra said quietly, allowing the image to linger. The plaintiff had just been made to clean the floor after her brother deliberately caused a tray of dessert dishes to shatter. This was not an isolated incident, but part of a pattern of emotional abuse and exploitation documented by the plaintiff's testimony. Judge Moreno's expression hadn't changed, but her eyes were rock hard. Nina Henderson was not a daughter in that household, Your Honor, Lysandra stated. She was unpaid labor. She was a maid, a scapegoat, and a piggy bank. And when she finally stood up for herself, her family responded with a coordinated campaign of defamation and harassment. My father tried to sputter a response, but Judge Moreno held up a hand. I've heard enough. The verdict came 2 weeks later. I was at my desk at work when Lysandra called. I stepped into an empty conference room, heart pounding. We won, she said. Some complete victory. My knees went weak, and I sank into the nearest chair. The judge ruled their behavior was malicious and intentional. Defamation, proven. Tortious interference, proven. She awarded you $130,000 in compensatory damages for harm to your reputation and economic losses. $130,000. And, Lysandra continued, the court ordered them to pay your attorney fees as the prevailing party. That's an additional $25,000. My breath was shallow. The numbers were immense, life-altering. Nina. Though, I'm here? I whispered. I can't believe it. Believe it? Lysandra commanded. Now comes the fun part. Collection. The judgment was real. The legal fight was over. Now, I waited for the money to fund my freedom. The legal victory felt immense, but it was just paper. My family didn't have $155,000 in cash. Lysandra immediately filed for a property lien against the Henderson estate. A legal claim that meant they couldn't sell or refinance without satisfying my judgment first. But the universe, or perhaps just financial inevitability, seemed to have its own timing. The bank that held Thaddeus's secret second mortgage initiated foreclosure proceedings. He had missed 3 consecutive payments on the $175,000 loan, his phantom investment having produced 0 returns. Faced with losing the house entirely to the bank, my parents made the only choice they had left. They listed the house for sale. The market was strong, the neighborhood desirable, and the house sold quickly, in just 6 weeks, for $450,000. On a rainy Tuesday in April, I received a text from Lysandra. Title company closing is today at 2 p.m. Wiring instructions already submitted. You don't need to be there. I didn't need to be there. But part of me, the part that had scrubbed floors and swallowed insults, and pretended to be grateful for burnt scraps, needed to know it was real. I drove to the First American Title Company office and sat in my car across the street, watching through the rain-streaked windshield as my parents arrived. Thaddeus walked like a man going to his execution. Alara clutched his arm, looking frail and defeated. Lysandra recounted the details of the closing to me later. Having gotten the summary from the escrow officer Brenda, a woman who apparently had 0 tolerance for financial nonsense, Brenda pushed the settlement statement across the table to my father. "Here is the house sale amount," she said, her tone coolly professional. $450,000. Thaddeus's eyes had reportedly lit up at the number. Even drowning in debt, he saw that large number and calculated his escape. But Brenda's pen moved down the page, tapping each deduction line. Minus your original mortgage payoff, $200,000. Minus broker fees and commissions, $27,000. Minus transfer taxes and recording fees, $8,000. Thaddeus nodded, likely doing the math in his head. Still over $200,000 left. Enough to start over, maybe buy a small condo. Rebuild his delusion of grandeur. Brenda flipped the page. Additionally, there is a court-ordered lien filed by Nina Henderson. We are legally required to wire transfer $130,000 directly to her account to satisfy the judgment. The color drained from my father's face. And, Brenda continued, unmoved, the prevailing party attorney fees, in the amount of $25,000. She let the silence stretch. Then, she pointed to the very bottom line. Your net proceeds after all liens, fees, and payoffs. $60,000. Thaddeus went from beet red to ashen pale in the space of a heartbeat. His mouth opened and closed, soundlessly. Alara started crying, quiet, helpless tears. This can't be right, Thaddeus croaked. You must have made a mistake. Brenda slid a calculator across the table. You're welcome to verify the math yourself, Mr. Henderson. But there was no mistake. The numbers were merciless and exact, $450,000. Minus all debts. Minus my full judgment. Minus Lysandra's fees. Leaving them with $60,000. The house they had been so proud of. The symbol of their success. The cold throne from which they had ruled my life was reduced to a small, final check and a forwarding address at a budget motel. I was in the middle of a budget meeting at work when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. Professional Nina, the one who delivered clean reports, didn't check personal notifications. But when the meeting ended and I returned to my desk, I opened my banking app. The notification was simple, stark, and beautiful. Wire transfer received. Plus $155,000. Sender First American Title Company. I stared at the number for a full minute, watching it just sit there. Permanent. Real. Mine. This wasn't money my parents had given me out of love or obligation. This was restitution. This was justice with a dollar sign attached. They had tried to break me, and instead, they had funded my freedom. That night, alone in my apartment with a mug of chamomile tea, I let myself smile. I didn't cheer or cry. I just felt a profound, deep sense of resolution. The next morning, I drove to Aunt Rowena and Uncle Silas's house. The wisteria was blooming along their fence, purple cascades that smelled like spring and second chances. I sat at their kitchen table, the same one where I'd cried and plotted my escape 4 months ago. I pulled an envelope from my purse and slid it across the table. "What's this?" Rowena asked. $10,000, I said simply. "The loan you gave me, plus an extra $200 for interest, even though you said you didn't want it." Uncle Silas opened the envelope and saw the cashier's check. "Nina, you didn't have to." "Yes, I did," I insisted, my voice steady. "You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. You gave me the tools to fight back. This isn't just repayment, it's gratitude." Rowena's eyes grew shiny. "We're proud of you, sweetheart. So proud." I stayed for lunch. We didn't talk about the lawsuit or my family's implosion. We talked about Rowena's gardening plans and my ideas for a weekend trip. It felt clean. Like a chapter closing and a new one beginning without fanfare or drama. 12 months have passed since the gavel fell and the dust settled. I'm sitting in my studio apartment, my own place, purchased with a mortgage I qualified for all by myself. It's small, with a galley kitchen and a bathroom the size of a closet, but every inch of it is mine. I don't eat leftovers unless I want to. I don't serve anyone but myself. The $155,000 settlement money sits in a high-yield savings account, my safety net, my screw-you money. I don't keep tabs on my family anymore. I blocked their numbers and muted their names. But information seeps through. I heard Thaddeus is living in a budget motel, working the night shift as a janitor. Alara filed for divorce 6 months after the house sale and is living in a subsidized apartment. Serafina and Caspian drifted away, cutting contact with everyone. When the money runs out and the audience gets bored, there's nothing left to hold on to. I feel free. Free from the weight of their expectations. Free from the script that said I had to endure abuse. I set down my mug of cocoa and smile at my reflection in the window. Tomorrow, I'm having lunch with Aunt Rowena. She's making glazed ham and pecan pie. A celebration of 1 year of freedom. And when she serves the pecan pie, the same dessert I once scraped off a floor while my brother filmed and laughed, I'll add a scoop of cold vanilla ice cream. Not because someone told me I could have it. Because I want it, and I'll enjoy every single bite. I'm not anyone's maid anymore. I'm Nina, and that, finally, is enough.